Hey there movie lovers, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're transforming back to 1986 with a deep dive into the Transformers the movie. This animated cult classic took the beloved Saturday morning cartoon and cranked it up to 11, delivering bigger action, darker stakes and a soundtrack that absolutely rocked. But beyond the epic battles and unforgettable voice cast, there's a treasure trove of fascinating behind-the-scenes stories. So transform, roll out and get ready for 20 things you never knew about the Transformers the movie. At one stage during development, the movie went by a very different version of events in an alternate screenplay titled The Secret of Cybertron, written by longtime Transformers story editor and writer Flint Dill. This early draft explored a broader and more mysterious history of Cybertron, placing greater emphasis on its ancient secrets and the origins of the Transformers themselves. During development, writer Ron Friedman had to fight hard to include two elements he felt were essential to the story. One was the introduction of RC, who would become the franchise's first female Autobot and an important step in expanding the Transformers universe beyond an all-male cast of characters. The other was ensuring that the Transformers continued to interact with humans, specifically familiar faces Spike Witwicky and his son Daniel, rather than removing people from the story altogether. For an animated film aimed at children, Transformers has a surprisingly high body count. This was because Hasbro wanted to wipe the slate clean and introduce a new toy line to coincide with the launch of the third season of the cartoon, with the movie acting as a bridge between the second and third seasons. The decision over whether to kill Optimus Prime sparked what screenwriter Ron Friedman later described as heated arguments among the filmmakers. He was strongly opposed to the idea, viewing the character as both a father figure and an icon whose loss would fundamentally damage the story. Friedman argued that physically removing Optimus Prime was equivalent to taking a father out of a family, and insisted that the character would need to be brought back. However, Hasbro and its representatives rejected this, telling him they had ambitious plans in place, which, in practice, meant introducing newer and more expensive toys. Those representatives came from Hasbro's advertising agency, a group that had gradually gained significant influence over the production of multiple projects. The film is perhaps best remembered by 1980s kids for traumatizing a generation with the on-screen death of Autobot leader Optimus Prime. The reaction was so intense, with children devastated and parents unprepared to handle their youngsters' robot-shaped grief, that Hasbro altered the script of its follow-up animated feature, G.I. Joe the Movie. That film originally depicted the death of the Joes leader, Duke, but as the death of Prime was a major cock-up, Hasbro stepped in and insisted his fate be altered, with the character instead falling into a coma after being struck in the heart by a snake spear. Stan Bush's powerhouse anthem, The Touch, a song so closely associated with the movie, only came about because of a surprising twist of Hollywood fate. The track was originally written by Bush and co-writer Lenny Macaluso for Sly Stallone's 1986 action film Cobra. When it didn't make the cut for Stallone's movie, the song found a new home with the Transformers. Several tracks on the album are credited to a band called Spectre General, and finding any of their albums is impossible, because the band never actually existed. The songs Nothing's Gonna Stand in Our Way and Hunger were in fact recorded by a real band called Kick Axe. Hasbro felt the name was a little too risque, so they invented the pseudonym Spectre General instead, and neglected to inform the band of the change. The Transformers the movie was Orson Welles' final film, with the Hollywood legend lending his voice to the transforming planet-sized threat Unicron. Screenwriter Ron Friedman later explained that Wells was cast simply because he was available, noting that he was constantly looking for work and was so eager for roles that he would have taken almost anything offered to him. The film also marked the final screen credit for the shining Scatman Crothers, who provided the voice of Autobot Jazz. Orson Welles' involvement is often surrounded by stories, with it widely reported that he died just days, apparently just 5, after completing his final voice recording as the planet-eating villain Unicron. In reality, Welles was in poor health during the sessions and struggled with severe breathing difficulties, which meant much of his dialogue had to be heavily synthesized and electronically enhanced in post-production. An early version of the story saw the Decepticons taking control of Autobot City on Earth, with Blaster leading a group of guerrilla-style fighters in an effort to reclaim it. According to Friedman, the sequence was removed purely because executives wanted it cut as a way of asserting creative control. Unicron's original name was Ingesta, envisioned as a mysterious being who controlled Unicron's planet form. The filmmakers ultimately merged the two concepts into a single character, with the planet itself still transforming into a humanoid figure. Leonard Nimoy brought considerable gravitas to the film by providing the voice of the newly introduced villain Galvatron, giving the character a cold authority that instantly set him apart from his predecessor, Megatron. Nimoy would later return to the Transformers universe more than 2 decades on, this time taking on the role of Sentinel Prime in Michael Bay's Transformers Dark of the Moon. When it came to writing, Ron Friedman had a clear soft spot for certain characters, naming Autobot war veteran Kup, the treacherously ambitious Starscream, and unsurprisingly Optimus Prime as his favourites to write. Kup allowed Friedman to inject humour and battle-hardened wisdom into the script, while Starscream's constant scheming provided sharp dialogue and dark comedy. Optimus Prime, meanwhile, gave him the opportunity to explore leadership, sacrifice and moral authority, helping to anchor the film's emotional core and ensuring that these 3 very different characters stood out as some of the movie's most memorable personalities. Not every character was a joy for Friedman to write, and he was very blunt about his least favourite. Reflecting on the experience, he later admitted that Wheelie was, in his own words, a pain in the ass, largely due to the character's constant rhyming dialogue, which made scenes more cumbersome to script and refine. The Autobots' matrix of leadership, the glowing crystal-like artifact Optimus Prime passes on to Ultra Magnus, was inspired by an unexpectedly religious source. Friedman has explained that the concept was influenced by the Petrine touch in Catholicism, the tradition in which authority and spiritual leadership are passed down from St. Peter to successive popes. In this way, he argued, Optimus Prime did not truly die, but instead assumed another form that lived on through his successor. The only revision Friedman objected to was the inclusion of the word shit. However, the powers that be insisted it remain, as doing so allowed the film to secure a PG rating rather than a G. At the time, films with a G rating were shown less frequently in cinemas, making the higher classification more commercially appealing. The line was then later removed for the home video release, before being restored during a remaster in 2000. Marvel published an adaptation of the film, releasing it as a 3-part comic series. Because it was based on an early version of the script, the comics featured a different design for the Matrix and an alternative death for the Autobot Ultra Magnus. To mark the film's 20th anniversary in 2006, IDW published its own adaptation. This version included additional scenes, such as a battle at the Ark between the missing Combiners and Omega Supreme, along with Shockwave and Reflector being destroyed by Unicron. Originally, Ultra Magnus's death sequence called for him to be lassoed and drawn and quartered by the Sweeps' energy beams. but this was deemed too graphic, hence the less disturbing shot-to-death sequence seen instead. Although some pre-release advertisements promoted the Transformers the movie as being presented in widescreen, it was actually animated in the standard 4:3 television aspect ratio. For its theatrical release, the image was matted to a 16:9 widescreen format, effectively trimming the top and bottom of the frame. To accommodate this, the film's storyboards featured dotted guidelines, indicating how the completed 4:3 animation would be cropped for cinemas, ensuring key visual elements remained within the safe area once the image was reframed. Upon its release, the Transformers the movie was almost universally panned by professional critics and struggled at the box office, earning just under its modest $6 million budget during its initial run. However, critical opinion softened considerably in the decades that followed. Reassessed by fans and reviewers alike, the film developed a strong cult following and went on to generate more than $30 million through VHS, DVD and Blu-ray sales. In the end, what was once viewed as a commercial disappointment ultimately transformed into a profitable and much-loved success story. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about the Transformers the movie. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.